is Liana, live from Kids in the House. Today we're going to talk about family finance, and I am so honored to have Lee Hausner here as our guest. She happens to be one of my favorite parenting experts, probably the one who influenced my parenting the most. She's written some incredible books, Children of Paradise, Homework with No Tears, and also some great books about family business, family planning, and is an incredible expert all around.
Thank you.
So great to have you here. And she's also have some great videos on Kids in the House. So my first question to you, Lee, is how do I teach my kids how to save?
The teaching the kids how to save is really all combined with really understanding about money. You teach children how to save by really starting a savings account when you start part of the allowance. Now, my whole allowance system is you give children allowances for three parts. There's a part that they can spend immediately, there's a part they save, and there's a part they give to charity. So the minute you're starting to give them money, you're building in that concept of saving. It becomes really very important. As they get older, I think I was sharing with you an experience that I had years ago when I watched someone teaching a group of older children about compounding. How if you save your money and you keep saving, it grows. And they did that very interesting compounding exercise. If I give you a penny today and I double it every day for 30 days, this penny, how much money are you going to have at the end of a month? And the sum comes out. Do you want to take a guess? Wow,
you make me think on my feet here. I have no clue.
It's over $10 million.
$10 million?
$10 million. If you want to check that out, go on the internet and look up Save a Penny a Day.
That is crazy.
It's absolutely, well, it's 100% compounding, which obviously we don't normally get. But when that exercise first occurred and these young people were doing it, you should have seen the expression on their faces when they realized $10 million. Suddenly they really understood why saving and building up a savings account and getting interest becomes really significant.
Well, I'm going to go home and tell my kids about this one. And how do you teach them about interest and?
Well, the interesting thing about interest, and I have to share something, I can't take credit for it because a client shared this with me and I thought it was brilliant. They are a very successful family. She has two boys who are 8 and 10. She created a bank of mom. So every month they deposit in the bank of mom. They deposit their allowance. They deposit things that they have received as gifts. And she pays them 5% interest a month. I said, can I please become part of that bank? I mean, she realizes that that's unrealistic. But what has happened is by doing that, they became very much aware of interest. So she shared with me recently one of her sons wanted to take out $20. And she said, you certainly can take out $20 from your bank account, but you realize that if you take out $20 each month, you're losing the 5% that I'm going to pay you on that. He didn't take the money out.
That's a great idea.
And they were 8 and 10. And they were able to get that concept that if you put money, I think that you can start savings account in banks. So kids can go and get, their savings account book and really see that money can work for you. If you save your money, you have your money working.
Great, this is great advice. So I would like to remind everyone at home that you can actually ask questions to all our great experts that are going to be on today. Please just type it on Kids in the House /live TV. And with that, I'd like to bring in 2 more experts. We have Greg Mercett and Erin Lowry. I hope I'm saying her name the Swedish way, I think. How are you guys?
Hi, Leanna. Doing well.
So Greg is a dad of 6 kids, and he's a certified financial planner and a founder of an app called Busy Kid that's incredible. You're going to have to tell us more about it. And you started it to help parents and kids with money management. And
That's right.
we also have Erin Lowry. She's a personal financial expert. And also you wrote a book called Broke Millennials that will kind of help millennials to get their financial life better together, right?
Yes.
So, Craig, tell us about your app.
Well, Busy Kid is literally an app that parents can assign chores to their kids. They can do those chores earn money, and that money gets directly transferred from the parent's bank account into the kid's Busy Kid account. I like to think of it as your kid's first job with direct deposit. We've made it that easy, so we've really simplified this whole allowance thing. And one of the things that I think is most important is when kids are at a young age, you really start to understand this whole concept of linking work ethic with money smarts. And that's what Busy Kid does in a very kind of automated and easy way for a parent. So imagine you give your kid a bunch of chores to do, they do those chores, they earn that money, and then you get a text message on Thursday that says, Johnny's earned $12, do you want to pay him? And all you have to do is say yes or no on your text, and we transfer the money.
Super cool. And tell us about your book.
Thanks for having me. First of all, I love that app. I'd love to hear more about that. And
And
the book,
is it-
so it's Broke Millennial, Stop Scraping By and Get Your Financial Life Together. And the book is really a pick your own financial path twist. And every chapter stands on its own. And it takes a millennial from just that 101 basics, trying to understand how money works, building a budget, understanding credit. And then I take people all the way through towards the middle section where you're dealing with student loans. You can't split a bill with your friends at dinner. You have to talk to your partner about money. And then we kind of round it up with the later in life process for a millennial where you're saving for retirement, you're looking to invest, you're thinking about buying a house, and then ultimately how to pick a financial planner.
Do you think that millennials are different than the prior generation in their relationship to money?
I think every generation evolves and is a little bit different. One thing certainly that's unique for millennials, which I'm 27, is the student loan debt burden. And that has been a unique factor for us that other generations haven't seen it quite as intensely. You know, the people who just graduated in 2016, who are on the tail end of the millennial generation, the average student loan burden was over $37,000. And then if you marry someone that has that same amount of debt, that's a really hefty chunk of change to start off your life. And the other thing is socially, lives have changed, and millennials are more likely to be cohabitating before marriage. They're more likely to be having children outside of the context of marriage, and that really changes how you interact with money.
Well, one of the questions we get the most, and Dr. Hausner started talking about it a little bit, is allowance. Some of the questions people are asking is, at what age should you give your kids allowance? Should allowance be something you take away, use as a discipline tool? Is paying children for chores a good thing, or should the allowance still be there? So I'd like to actually hear each of your opinion about these things. So go ahead.
Yeah, I will tell you one thing about the allowance. If you really think about it, it's the first money management tool that you're going to have to introduce kids to money. So I don't think it should be ever used as a punishment. What I suggest, and I also want to comment, I like the idea of children working and being paid. But I also feel that it's important that there are certain things that they do not get paid for. So that there are obligations that you have in the family because you're part of the family, and then you can post jobs for pay that they can get paid for. But everything they do is not something they get paid for. Now, suppose they have chores that they're supposed to do and they don't do it. You don't punish them by withholding the allowance. What I want you to do, they're supposed to clean their room and they didn't. You give them the allowance and then you give them a bill for your services for cleaning the room, and they have to pay it back. Because that's much more like the real world operates. And it's not on a punitive thing. That is how you will deal with not doing the responsibilities that you have, which is a little different than the chores that you get paid for.
So Craig, what do you think about that? What's your view on it?
I think I largely agree with Lee on that. I think there are some chores that shouldn't be paid for, but if you can use chores in a meaningful way to help kids understand what a work ethic really is, absolutely, that's the way. I think I might disagree just a little bit on the punitive there, because sometimes it depends on the kid, but sometimes that is kind of the Achilles heel for that particular kid. Maybe for a teenager, it might be that cell phone is the one thing that you can use as a discipline that really gets their attention. So it kind of, I think it varies between kids, but I think that if you can tie that to work ethic and really help them understand that, then you're on the right track.
The cell phone is the one that works best with my teenagers.
Yeah. Me too. That is the one that
That is
works
the one,
almost
yeah.
always.
So, do you think that millennials are less inclined to give their kids allowance?
I think that it's probably a parenting decision just like any other. I don't think that millennials would be less inclined necessarily. I do believe it shouldn't be linked to punishment because you don't want your child to have a negative relationship to money starting at that young of an age. And they're going to start imprinting and having a relationship to money as soon as they understand the concept. And I also like the idea of, I understand using chores, but I would also encourage your child to get a little entrepreneurial. You know, one of the things my parents did is my sister and I were required to pay for 50% of anything we wanted, which really encouraged us to curb impulse spending at a young age and kind of understand the value of a dollar. But we also had to create unique ways in which we could make money. And one of the kind of origin story, the way I start the book is my mom was having a yard sale and I had the idea to sell Krispy Kreme donuts to all the people coming to the yard sale. And I asked my dad to stake me and to buy the donuts because I was 7 years old, so I couldn't drive to get them and I didn't have money. And in the end, he took back the money that he used to stake me and taught me about net profit when I was 7 years old.
Well, all of you guys are giving us some very, very good input. How about how much? Like what age do you start and how much do you give? Lee?
Generally speaking, children, I'm speaking about younger children, don't have a real concept about money until they're about 8 years old, where they're really beginning to understand numbers. So I usually start an allowance about 8 years old, but how much depends upon what they're going to be responsible for. You know, what are you going to make them responsible for? And since I back an allowance into 3 parts, I would decide what they have to be responsible for and give them enough that we're also going to be able to have that savings, charity, and spending. Those 3 concepts, I think, are very important for kids as it relates to money. But you know, what I really am concerned about, Leanne, is that the generation, we're in a very much of a materialistic kind of society. And so there's a lot of impetus to spend and a lot of impetus to acquire things. And I think part of the relationship of how you deal and how you budget and how you control money is really related to not having to have so many things and making it possible to really not get involved in indulging your kids because you think that everybody else is doing that.
Yeah, it does feel like we're raising more entitled kids. What do you guys think about that? Greg, father of 6, do you think this generation is more entitled?
I absolutely believe that that's kind of the trend, and it's a bad trend. We have to really combat that early. I think that kind of parlays into some of the millennial mindset that you know, I'm great and everyone should give me something for nothing. But I think we definitely need to do that. I think personally, I think the window of opportunity to teach a kid about work ethic and money is 5 to 15. So I might be a little bit younger on that, but I think if you can get that kind of decade to learn these kinds of things, I think they'll be on a good path for the rest of their lives. I think if you start late in the game, they're already going to have bad habits that will continue to haunt them throughout their financial life.
You know, can I interrupt a minute to say on this thing about allowance? I'll tell you what I like in high school. By the time your child is in high school, I like them to submit a budget over which you have line item veto. So I'd like them to think about what they may need, a clothing allowance, particularly things like that. What might you need for this year? And then start giving them money in lumps, but they have to stay within that budget. That's how we start teaching budgeting. And if they go over the budget, you don't bail them out. If you start that kind of concept when they're in those formative years, and I agree that we're teaching these money habits really when they're very young, then they're prepared, and they're particularly prepared when they go off to college. And the first thing that they hit when they hit a college campus is all the credit card companies. So you don't really want them to get involved with the idea that we can just live on credit. And I think if they've had to budget through high school, that certainly prepares them.
And I would maybe add to that. I think that's a great. I think that the budgeting is a great thing. Have them budget their own money that they've earned, not so much the money that you give them. I like that whole earnings relationship there because their habits and their decisions are going to change because they earned their own money as opposed to spending mom and dad's or parents' money.
I did it with my teenage daughter, and it changed very quickly how much she wanted to spend on a pair of jeans.
Yes, exactly, right?
So now we're actually going to see a clip from our kids' court, and this is how some kids think you raise responsible kids. Here we go. What can you do to teach a kid to be financially responsible?
You just don't really spend that much money around them. Like if you're going out to buy like a new computer, like bring them with you because like sometimes like some of these stores are like exciting, but like if you like don't spend like a lot of money around them, or then like they'll then like, oh, maybe if you spend a lot of money, like you get better stuff, but then you get like more. You get less, what do you call it? You get less.
They probably take the coins and say, hey, this is a nickel, or this is a quarter. A quarter is worth whatever it's worth.
That don't use a lot of it unless you need it. And like, don't use it on bad things. And sometimes you can give it to charity.
So this is where kids think about raising financially responsible kids. So now we're going to go to our experts. Guys, how do you raise a financially responsible child? Lee, do you want to start?
I think part of it is modeling responsible behavior on the part of the parents and making kids aware of what things cost. I mean, you can start when you're going to the grocery store with your younger children and talking about the price of things. You can go to department stores and talk about how we can get greater value if we buy something on sale. These kind of conversations, unfortunately, often do not occur, particularly if a family is more affluent. You know, if you grow up in a poor family, you're very much aware that money is finite because there's a lot of conversation. We can't afford it. You'll wear the hand-down clothes of your older children, and so they become very much aware of money being finite. As families become more successful, there's less of this conversation, and things just appear. And I think that parents, because you can afford it, you have to stop and say, I may be able to afford it, but what lessons do I want to teach? Because I really want my children to have sound money habits when they're not in my presence. And that can start very young. I think I was sharing with you, I have a 13-year-old granddaughter. I've shopped with her when she was, at the time she's been very young. And I used to say, why don't you check the sale rack first? She always checks that sale rack now. I mean, it was an easy thing to do. It doesn't have to be a heavy-duty kind of thing, but make them aware that you can get greater value from a dollar. The dollar can buy twice as much if it's on sale. And you just start those kinds of conversations and start making them aware of how money is and the finite aspect of it.
I think even giving them gift cards is a great thing because then they have to figure out how much they can, make choices of what to do with the gift cards, even when they're young. Craig, you did something incredible that I followed you via your website. You took your 6 kids on a trip across, was it 26 states or something?
Yes, yes, long time. 26 states and 25 days and 7,500 miles, and we used 1,000 gallons of gas, and that wasn't when gas was cheap. So we went across the nation and we literally did household chores for people who had cancer or autism or those kinds of challenges in their family. It was extremely meaningful, and it was just a wonderful thing. And I think it teaches kids a lot of things, but it also teaches them how to give back. Can I go back to what we were just talking about? I think kids are at such a disadvantage now because we live in a world where money is invisible to them. They don't really see it. Parents don't pull out wads of cash and coins out of their purses or pockets. And so we have to teach in a very different way. And I think we have to be very transparent when we do this. So we all pay our bills online, most of us now. And so I think that's a great opportunity to sit down with your kid and say, hey, I'm going to pay these 5 bills. Why don't you help me? And go through it and let them understand, holy smokes, the electric bill when you live in Phoenix, Arizona in July is $700. Those kinds of things start to really impact them. Or when you're at the register at a grocery store, you have 2 cards in your hand and you start telling them, this is a debit card, this is a credit card. If I swipe this one, I get a bill at the end of the month. If I swipe this one, it sucks it right out of my account. You can do that kind of stuff right on the fly, and you start kind of bringing that invisible aspect of money right back to your pocketbook so they understand that stuff. That's
very good advice. I asked my son yesterday how much he thought a gallon of milk cost. And he said $50, I think.
Almost in California. I mean, it's...
Yeah. But so get them conscious, start talking about it, help them be involved with the bills.
Absolutely.
Great advice.
Let them plan a vacation. One of the interesting things that you can do when your kids are a little bit older at a family meeting is say, we're going to do a weekend trip. Here's a budget. Kids plan it. And they have to plan within that budget. I mean, these are all these kinds of opportunities that you give them to practically deal with money. This is building their skills in being responsible.
That's a great idea, Lee, and I tried it once and they said, holy smokes, it costs too much, let's not go.
So you came out ahead on that one, didn't you?
I know, it's great. It worked just right.
And
but
it is really about...
I was like,
It is really about talking to your children. To hit back on this entitlement point from earlier, millennials get a bad rap. I get it. Everyone thinks we're entitled. My line is, we didn't give the gold ribbons and participation trophies to ourselves, or the gold stars and participation trophies to ourselves. They were handed to us. And because of that, I think it's important for us, millennials, as we move into parenting, to be really aware of what that did to our generation and to push back against that and have these open, honest conversations with your children, to not hand them everything. You know, I'm an example of, I was required to pay for things when I was a kid. I was required to pay for 50% of my college education, even though I came from an affluent family. My parents could afford to pay for it, but they made me pay for part of it. And I still came out debt-free because I had been raised to make a rational decision by the age of 18 about what money meant and what a burden of $80,000 in student loan would do to me when I got out of college. And I managed to save $10,000 in college because I had a work ethic, just completely at the hands of my parents talking to me about money from a very young age.
So at what age should you give a teenager a credit card and get them used to debits and credit cards? Lee, what's your thoughts on that? Well,
the credit card has to be as part of the allowance. I mean, you want them to have a credit card for an emergency. But in the plan that I like for particularly the teenage group, if they've given you a budget, and this is their budget, that budget is not, this is my budget plus a credit card. So if they spend on the credit card, that is part of the budget. So I think the mistake that sometimes parents do is they say, we gave them a budget, but then they have a credit card. And then they have unlimited use to the credit card. Credit cards are part of the budget. And if they're abused, you take the credit card away. So the credit card is for an emergency, and then you take the debit card is what they use for their spending. Or they can use the credit card as long as they realize that that's coming out of their budget. They have to pay for that. Good advice. And
hey, Leanna?
Yeah?
Boy, I sure like debit a lot better. If the money is not there, it's not going to work. I think debit's really good. You mentioned gift cards a little bit earlier. I think those are even good because if there's no money on the gift card, nothing's going to happen. So those kinds of things, I think those instruments are a little bit better teaching tools because they equate, if you don't have the money, you can't do it. So I like that.
Can I tell you an interesting, I had a gift card experience with one of my grandchildren. It was wonderful. It was a $25 gift card. I took her to the store. She ran to try to find something, and the first thing she saw was $35. And she's standing there looking at 35, and I say, is 35 greater or less than 25? And she says, it's greater. And she's looking around, and she really is having a difficult time. And finally, she finds something that's $25. And she's very excited. And she says, Grandma, I can get this. And I am right there at a teaching moment. I said, and everyone's going to groan, no, you can't because there's tax. And she looked at me. And I said, you can't afford something for $25 because there's tax. You have to find something that's about $21 and we pay the tax. And I really made her do that. Part of me said, let her just do this, because I already had given her this experience of limiting, but now she understands about tax, about paying taxes.
Grandma's making them go to the discount rack, bursting their bubble with the tax. Oh my goodness.
What can I tell you? I think it's important that we be fiscally responsible as parents.
I love it.
One of the things I used to do doesn't work any longer, but I used to take all my kids to the 99-cent store to buy Christmas presents. And I said, here, get $20, you can get all your Christmas presents. But they loved it, of like picking it out. So, Greg, I have 2 kids. One of them is super responsible. She's really into money. She makes sure she gets paid her allowance. She keeps track of everything. She's very generous, but she's very, focused on money. The other one couldn't care less. The other one will lose the money and the gift cards, and it's very hard for me to get her interested in it. What should I do?
Well, I think probably the best thing to do is to start introducing very quickly the concept of you're on the hook to that one that's not all that paying attention to things, and say, listen, I know you want a purse, or you want this phone, or you want this whatever, and say, I'll go 50-50 on this, or I don't know, work out a deal with her, and all of a sudden it almost kind of forces her to start being smarter about her money and more responsible. So if you kind of get some skin in the game with your child, then they start paying a little more attention to what's going on.
So going 50-50 is a great idea. And how do you think the way millennials their relationship to money affect their kids? You said before that, that they should talk to their kids in a different way.
I think a big part of it is not just giving things to children. And we've talked about that a lot today, and I agree with all of it. A child should be working for anything that they want. I was raised with a 50-50 rule, so I loved what Greg just said, that 50-50 really helps you understand impulse purchases. It makes you evaluate what you're spending your money on. And I think the other thing is to have a child participate in the family planning of money and to talk to your child. If you don't want to share your income necessarily, you should at least have them have a realistic expectation of the family budget, and to kind of talk through what mom and dad value, maybe what you value. We've seen this shift with millennials, where millennials do tend to put money towards experiences over material goods. And I hope that that's a shift that continues, and that we teach our children to spend on what you personally value, not what the media tells you to value, not what your friends tell you to value, but what you value.
You are a big believer, Lee, in family meetings.
I absolutely am a huge believer. There's a business of the family. And if you look at successful businesses, there's structure, there's meetings, there's accountability. If we do that in the family, then we're going to have a successful family. And accountability around money is one of those big issues also. Understanding this and having conversations about it and talking about it. And if you have family meetings, you've got a venue for doing this teaching and this learning, which becomes really important in terms of raising individuals who are going to be responsible with financial assets.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. You have given us some great advice, and I learned from it personally, actually. I would like, before we say goodbye to you, I'd just like for you to tell the audience, how can we get a hold of you? I know you both have websites, so if you wouldn't mind telling us about your websites and so forth. And you have your app, of course, too. But
Sure. So, ours is very simple. It's just busykid.com. A lot of kids are busy these days, almost to the point of being too busy. And we want them to be busy doing things that are meaningful and things that develop life skills that will benefit them for the rest of their lives. And if you ask me, the 2 biggies are establishing and understanding a work ethic, and then being smart with your money.
Great advice. Erin, do you want to talk about yours?
Sure. So you can find me on brokemillennial.com. And I also have my book coming out. Let me get it in the screen for you. So it's Broke Millennials, Stop Scraping By and Get Your Financial Life Together, which is a perfect gift for any graduate in your life this year.
It's a great book. Thank you again for being on, and over now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanna.
So we're back in the studio here, and we are actually going to see a clip from a mommy blogger. She created this blog out of her own needs. She was trying to control her family budget, and the name of the website is $5 Dinners. And I have looked at this website many times. It's a great website. So we're going to hear a few words from her. Erin?
Hey, my name is Erin Chase, and I started the website $5 Dinners almost 9 years ago on a mission to help my family spend less money on groceries. We were hurting from the rising gas prices, and my husband had a long commute to work. And so our personal family budget just started getting pinched. And so I started blogging about what I was buying at the grocery store, how I was saving, how I was meal planning, what I was making, recipes, how much everything cost. And I started sharing that, and it resonated with people because everybody was sort of in the same, boat of like, okay, the economy's tanking. What do we do? How do we save money? And I think groceries is a fantastic and really easy, simple way to save money because you do have quite a bit of control over that. So I started $5 Dinners then, and I've really been on a mission ever since to help people spend less money on groceries, help get more organized in the kitchen, get your meal plan set out for you. And then as my boys, I have 4 boys, as they have gotten older, it's more now about the game of sort of staying a step ahead of their bottomless pit stomachs and trying to keep ahead of the meal planning and with freezer meals so that I don't have to end up going through the drive-through 3 nights a week and spending $45 a pop. So that is $5 Dinners and my mission to help people overall spend less money and get organized in the kitchen. Saving money on organic food is simpler than you probably realize. We have this sort of like ingrained in our mind, like organic food is just more expensive. Well, yes, it is baseline, but it's not always. So of course you need to be focusing on sales. Most traditional grocery stores will have a section in their sale ad for the organic products. If you have a store like Sprouts or Earth Fare or Fresh Market, Whole Foods, be looking at the sales at those particular stores. And again, taking advantage, stocking up, going in with a plan, all of those things are really important for saving on organics. And then if you have a Costco membership, I have no affiliation with Costco, but they have the very best prices and quality and variety of organic foods between frozen, fresh produce, frozen foods, canned goods, pasta. They have a large variety of organic that, dollar for dollar is very, very comparable to conventional ingredients that you would see at a traditional grocery store. If you want to save money with coupons, you can have the binder, you can have the file folder. Those are really helpful because there are paper coupons that are out there for a wide variety of products, including organics. We just finished talking about organics. So mambosprouts.com, coupons.com, the newspaper, all of those are great ways to find the printed coupons. If you don't want to fuss with those, there are a number of mobile apps that will help you cut your spending, help you earn either gift cards or earn cash back. So I bought a Checkout 51, MobiSave. Those are 3 that are cash back. So you scan your receipt after you buy the items, and then those savings accumulate, and then you can cash them out. And there's a new one that allows you to earn gift cards for different stores. That's Shopkick. So there are a couple different options out there to help you kind of earn money back, if you will, or earn gift cards back. So they're almost like, I like to think of them as sort of the opposite of coupons. Like coupons is here's take the money off my order. And these are like after you've purchased everything, you can earn that back. So it's kind of the flip side of that savings coin. Thank you so much for having me on Kids in the House TV. It has been such an honor and pleasure to get to share with you guys.
Thank you, Erin. And again, we think your website, $5 Dinner, is an incredible resource. Check it out, guys. And I'm back in the studio with Dr. Lee Hausner. So what do you do if a kid asks you, are we rich or poor?
That is a question that really throws parents. I think first you say, what do you mean? Because what is the context in which that child is asking that question? Now, if the child says, well, Johnny says we're so rich that I'm never going to have to work, now you know the context of that question. And you're able to say, if you're asking whether we have more money than we need to feed, clothe, and house our family, it's true. That's why we are philanthropic. And the role of philanthropy becomes very, very important to make kids understand that even though there's money, it's not all to be spent on this family, on self-indulgence. That when you have money, you do things for other people. And that keeps them grounded. I really say that what happens when families are very philanthropic, kids can't count their inheritance because they really don't know. And families that I've worked with, where I know that these young people eventually are going to have quite an inheritance, the family was very philanthropic. And these young people got themselves very competent because they really felt that the bulk of the money would go to philanthropy. So I think it's very important, particularly if you are an affluent family, that you are very clear what the expectations that your children can have about money. And one of the mantras that I have said to my clients is that you need to say to your children, here's what the money in this family means. You will not have to save for my grandchildren's education. You may not have to save for your retirement. But you need to know that we will do everything to help you build skills, so for the bulk of your life, you will go to the grocery store on your own nickel. And that's how you kind of set some boundaries, particularly when there's a clear show of money, so that that next generation doesn't feel that they do not have to have a good work ethic and learn to be responsible stewards of wealth themselves. This is what helps families generationally. I'm very concerned, Leanne, with 4th and 5th generation success. And the latest book I wrote about legacy families is how to create families that are going to be successful 4 to 5 generations past the original wealth creator. Because you know what happens to money? It's shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve. Money is one generation makes it, the next generation has a wonderful time. And by the time we're in the 3rd generation, money is gone. And that around the world is we talk about shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve. In Asia, they say rice paddy to rice paddy. In Holland, they say clog to clog. So we want to not have that happen. We want to get past that 3rd generation default. And part of that is being very responsible of letting kids understand how to manage money and how to be stewards of these financial assets.
And how do you motivate a kid who's not that motivated to be successful or to be responsible?
About money?
Yeah, or period. But if it's harder probably if you come from a wealthy family to be motivated.
Well, motivation is not something you can't motivate somebody. Motivation is internal, and I have a very easy formula for motivation. Motivation is an activity in which you feel good about. Avoidance is an activity where you have stress. So you're motivated when you have encouragement and you are enjoying the activity that you're engaged in. Now you can say, well, everyone doesn't like to go to school. It is true, but you try to make the school experience as productive and positive as possible so the kids will want to learn. The motivation to go out and be independent comes because you do not let a child think that he or she will not have to do that. That you're really clear about what the expectations are. That once they've gotten the skills, you expect them to fly. They're on the launching pad and they've got to launch. And when kids fail to launch, it's because the parents are giving them mixed messages. And the parents are permitting them not to launch. They're letting them stay at home, and they're letting them kind of halfway look for a job and not get out in the real world. Because if they felt like they had to, if they were going to feed themselves, they will be motivated to get some activity going.
This is why she's so brilliant. You are so brilliant, Lee Hausner. Okay, so we're going to bring in 2 more guests, Holly and Justin. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being on with us today. I want to introduce you a little more. Holly Homer is a mom of 3, just like me. And you're an incredible blogger. You have 2 blogs, Quirky Mama and Kids Activities blog. And we also have Justin Coupler, dad of 2, and editor of the Penny Hoarder a personal finance website that teaches people ways to make and save money. How are you guys?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
And you met Lee Hausner. So I'm going to start with you, Justin. It's spring break right now. Do you have any great tips for how to make your vacation affordable or your excursions?
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of my biggest tips for making a vacation affordable is using believe it or not, a credit card. Sounds a little counterproductive, but what you want to do is actually use a cashback credit card. How that works is every little thing you spend while you're on vacation, you use that credit card. And assuming you've already budgeted properly for that vacation, you should have the money saved to pay off that credit card when it comes time to be paid. So you not only get the points back from your vacation, but you have now paid that credit off without getting any interest tacked onto it. So you've gone on vacation, paid for the vacation, plus made a little extra money for your next vacation.
Very good idea. And Holly, what's your advice for parents who wants to work from home to make some extra income? One of your specialties.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us grew up, and I'm 47, so that gives you an idea of where I am on the spectrum of age. But we were taught that, I went to college, I got a master's degree, I went and got the job, and then I advanced at that job and got the promotion and all that kind of stuff. My husband did the same thing, and what we found is we were, in our early 40s, and we're working to death. And so one of the things I think that, you guys are talking about millennials and stuff. I think one of the things that is really good about the millennial generation is that they're not stuck in that tradition. They're not saying, hey, they aren't believing they can't do it or they have to follow a certain path. And so one of the things I would suggest is if you have a passion, for me, it happened to be blogging and live video. And so if you have that passion, go for it while you're doing other things. And that, could potentially grow and monetize into something that is so much better than what you were doing before that you quit.
And it is hard to be a working mom, but I think the benefit is that you have something to share with your kids, your up and downs. And sometimes I think it makes them share more with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, my husband he has retired from his position, and we do this together. And so and we partially homeschool the children. So like there is no day when my kids are not in the middle of entrepreneurship. And I just feel like in the long run, that's a better education than almost anything, because there are days that aren't pretty, but that's part of life. And that journey of, A plus A doesn't always equal B kind of thing.
Very true. So Lee, when should you start saving for college?
Well, when should you start saving for college? You should start saving. You should be building a savings account all along. And so particularly when you know there's going to be college, depending upon your income, people need to save a certain percentage of their income for both retirement and for college. Depends upon where they're going to go to college. It depends upon the level of your income. But I think the biggest tragedy, and was mentioned before, is the millennials coming out with these huge student loans that they will never, ever, hardly be able to get out from under. So the degree to which parents can think ahead in advance and do some of the savings plans, some of the tax efficient saving plans that the states have.
529.
529, yeah. I am very grateful. There's a big controversy about whether you should have your education paid for or not. I'm very grateful that my parents paid for my education. I valued it. I worked very hard. I did well. I was fortunate I came out without student loans. So I think you can pay for someone's education and have them value it. I would not pay for education if my child went to college and got on academic probation that first year because he or she was partying and gone out and were not doing what they needed to do. Then I would say you have to drop out. You have to drop out, you have to get a job, and you have to prove that you are responsible enough to go back to college. But I certainly, if parents can afford it, giving them that help to get them started is a priority, I think, of savings.
So approximately how much should you try to put aside a year?
Leanne, again, that depends upon your budget.
Yeah.
You know, you have to figure out what your fixed expenses are and then what your discretionary expenses are. And obviously the savings comes from discretionary expenses. How many children you have, will they go to a state school? But I think that people should just try to save as much as they can save. And our country is very, very poor on saving. As a nation, we have very low statistics in terms of how people are preparing for saving, which affects what's even going to happen in retirement.
Holly, how do you, you have 3 teenage sons, right?
Yes,
So
I do.
How have you done it?
One of the things that we're doing is giving them a set amount. And so that if they choose to, to use that at a super, super expensive college, then they're going to have extra bills or they're going to need to take out loans, which will obviously help them do that. But I think it's super important for them to realize the price of that education, because there are educations in this country that are completely outrageously priced for what you're getting from them. And I think that's part of the education here. So we also, my husband had his medical school paid for by the Air Force because he went and served in the Air Force. There's tons and tons of different ways you can get your schooling paid for if you need that. And he ended up going to an expensive private school with that, scholarship, but it was one that we then paid off by Air Force service for, 10 years afterwards. So it's not just about loans and it's not just about scholarships, but it can incentivize your kids to do what they can on their own.
And some people now is even question the worth, like, is it worth going to college? What do you think about that, Lee? Like, does it actually?
I think higher education is important. I do agree, though, that I think that there are some colleges that are extraordinarily overpriced for the value of the education that you will receive. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will do better in life because you paid that much for a high-priced college. Our state schools, some smaller colleges are doing a wonderful job in terms of giving people education. And very frankly, I think that there are certain kinds of trade schools that become important. The most important thing is that you are prepared to go out into the world and be able to make a living and support yourself.
Very
and
true.
so that kind of education becomes critical.
Holly and Justin, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. And I want to remind our audience to visit your guys' website, thepennyhoarder.com and kidsactivitiesblog.com. Great websites. And thanks again. Why do you think that teaching kids the value of money is such an important life skill?
Because your ability to be financially secure is critical to how you're going to feel about yourself and your happiness in life. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to know to have to live paycheck to paycheck and wonder if there should ever be an emergency, you could be out in the street or you could be living in your car. So we live in a world that is based both spiritually and materially. And so we have to pay attention to just learning that responsibility. And I think there's been a big problem. I mean, debt and credit card debt and people, having enormous problems in terms of how they're managing money seems to be increasing. I would like more financial education actually at the local schools, in high school. It would be really nice if we started building that into the curriculum.
Life skills.
Exactly.
If you like this show today, we hope that you will join our premium subscription, and we're going to roll a little more information about it.
Parenting is not easy, and you could always use the extra help. Kids in the House has over 500 best-selling authors, doctors, and experts, all at the touch of your fingertips, providing the answers and insight when you need it.
With over 9,000 videos, if you've got a question, Kids in the House has got the answer.
Get instant access today to the premium content parents need.
Oh yeah, we shine like stars.
Be a parenting superstar today by subscribing to our premium content.
Oh yeah, we shine.
Inspire,
Educate,
entertain.
Like stars.
Kids in the House.
So please go online and subscribe and support us. And ending with the house, I'd actually like to ask you something. It is sort of kind of hard to talk about money with your kids. Why do you think that is? Why do you think parents have such a resistance?
Money is the last taboo. It's not just talking to your kids about money. Money is the last taboo that we don't talk about. We talk about all kinds of other things. But money is still the thing that makes us a little bit uncomfortable. And I would just like people to understand that they get past that discomfort. It's an important topic. You need to be talking about it. It's the real problem that causes friction in marriages.
Yeah.
You know, they fall in love and I love you and we're going to get married. They never talk about money or their different attitudes toward money. And money is in divorces is one of the major causes of individuals getting divorced. And in those cases where money's been cited, it is not necessarily that there wasn't money. There was money, but there was a whole different system about how money was going to be used.
But it's how you handle the money.
It's how you handle money and the psychology of money and what money meant to you. It's a complicated psychological issue. But I would like to encourage parents who are watching here the importance of really beginning at the earliest ages of getting your kids responsible and learning how to manage money effectively.
Well, thank you so much for being on with us today.
It's a pleasure.
And you can
Leanne.
also see a lot more videos from Lee Hausner on our website and get her books. Homework Without Tears is a brilliant book if you have problems with homework with your kids. It's incredible. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Leanne. It's always a pleasure.
It's such a pleasure. Over now from Kids in the House.